Hi everyone, I'm Dawn Fisher of Morning Glory Needleworks and welcome to my first Floss Tube video. I hope you will enjoy the video and of course subscribe to learn more. I'm going to be posting videos on the 1st and 15th of the month, and in a minute I'll explain what all will be on the videos. But first I'd like to wish you a happy new year and tell you a little bit about me. Some of you don't know me, a lot of you don't know me. I hope you get to know me better. I currently live in beautiful St. Petersburg, Florida, and I'm originally from Michigan. I moved to Florida in 1989, so I have been here quite a while. I learned how to stitch, cross stitch in 1980. I'm sure some of the stitchers of an age will remember the little DMC. It was a kit that was like 50 cents you could get to introduce you to cross stitch, and that's how I got started. I was with my mother and we walked into a needlework store. It was mostly knitting, very small store, mostly knitting and needlepoint, but she had a cross stitch picture on the wall and I had never seen it before. And my mom got her items and then she said, "Do you want anything?" And I said, "I want to learn how to do that." And I pointed at the cross stitch picture, and the store owner sold me the little kit, and the rest is history, shall we say. I started taking other classes. Our local Singer Sewing Center had an instructor, a woman that came in and taught classes. So I took a few classes from her and learned a few different stitches. She told me about Embroiderers Guild, and luckily we had a chapter close by and about 10 minutes away. So I joined that chapter, and from there I learned more about Embroiderers Guild and all the different stitches, the different types of embroidery. I was very fortunate, our area is very fortunate that Eileen Bennett of the Sampler House, I'm sure many of you have heard of her, actually lived close by, and she lived close by and had a shop close by. And our chapter was the first chapter she taught at to teach her Home is Where You Hang Your Needlework sampler. And that really got me hooked on samplers, stitching on linen. At that time, linen in the 80s, linen was not, we didn't have the wide variety of linens that we have now. Like 35 count was the smallest you could absolutely get. And that was basically it, 35 count and maybe a 28 count. There may have been a few Luganas and things like that, there just wasn't the variety. There wasn't all the overdyed threads. There wasn't, it was like DMC Floss or JP Coates and Clark or whatever it is. That was about all the floss choices there were to stitch with. So anyway, that's how I got started. And Eileen had a wealth of knowledge about samplers. And I stitched every design she came up with, and then I started changing them because a lot of her colors at that time were more browns and greens and muted shades, and I really preferred the brighter colors. And so I started changing the colors in her samplers, and then after that I started designing my own samplers using a book I'll probably talk about later. It's Motifs from Old Dutch Samplers, which is a fabulous book. It's out of print now, but you can still find it. And so anyway, that's kind of how I got started, and I began collecting samplers. I have a huge collection of antique samplers that I will gradually be going over in these videos. I taught a few classes while I lived in Michigan, not very many. I designed a little bit. And then when we moved to Florida, my husband and I moved to Florida, I kind of quit. I stitched, but I didn't design anymore. And then in 2000, the beginning of the new millennia, it was kind of a new beginning for me because I got divorced. I went back to college and got my bachelor's degree in business. And then for a graduation present, my mother gave me some money, which helped me buy a laptop. And it helped me buy the programs I used to design my samplers with. And at that point, I started really designing more and teaching a little bit. It's hard when you work full time to travel and teach. So I didn't do a lot, but I did. I taught for Stitcher's Hideaway. I taught for the Seattle Sampler Guild. So I've taught literally from coast to coast. I've taught in Connecticut. I've actually taught in New York now. I've taught in Seattle, just all over. And I love it. And I want to continue teaching as much as I can. And I recently retired in 2019. And at that point, I really started, I wanted to teach more and expand, travel more, all that. I was scheduled to teach in 2020, a one-day class in Houston and a three-day class in New York State for the Mideastern region EGA there. And unfortunately, we know what happened in 2020. The seminars both got postponed to this year. And unfortunately, this year, 2021, actually last year, because this is going to be posted on January 1st, in 2021, it wasn't any better in April and May. So they asked me if I would be willing to teach over Zoom, which I was. And it was fun. I taught a one-day class for the Houston Guild there of my grandma's button box. And then I taught for 3 days on Zoom for the New York, for the Mideastern region EGA seminar there. And I taught the Lady Washington and the button box. So it worked well. I was pleased. I had a little bit of training. They worked with us. They were very good at training us and working with all the instructors, and it went out great. So again, now I'm going to start teaching over Zoom. I'll be announcing some classes, some recorded classes that I'll be teaching, so you can take them from home wherever you are. Of course, I'm always willing to travel. If any of you are interested in having me come teach, I'll be talking a lot about over the course of the videos, the floss tubes, about classes I teach and ideas I have. And so I'm just, teaching over Zoom was a little bit different for me because I'm used to really walking around and talking to people. And when you're on Zoom, it's very quiet. So I had to talk a lot, but it went really well. A lot of people have finished their projects, and I'm thrilled when they send me pictures of their projects that they've finished. And some of them have changed a few things, especially the button box, because everybody gets different buttons. So that one's a lot of fun. So anyway, but I will be, again, teaching more and announcing more classes. So if you want to follow me, I have a Facebook page, Morning Glory Needleworks Facebook page. I will post a link in the comments at the bottom of this video, that under the YouTube, and I will post a link. I will post my email address and a bunch of other links that I'll go over later on in this floss tube. So what I plan to talk about in every floss tube, of course, every one will be different, but I want to talk about the same basic things. Just to give you an idea, the first video of every month, I plan on posting these on the 1st and the 15th of every month. So this is my first one, posted on January 1st. Welcome. And what I'm going to talk about is, I'll give you a little life update, what's going on, where, if I'm teaching, if I'm traveling, what's going on with my family, Jeffrey, my significant other, and our 5 cats, our 5 wonderful cat children, and anything else that's going on in life, anything exciting, retreats I'm going to, something like that. And I'll also be talking about a stitch of the month. Now, I started this a while ago on my Facebook page, but I didn't keep up with it. So I've decided to restart it. And I'm going to be talking about that today, and we'll be going over that. We're going to be going over basic stitching instructions. This is very good for beginners or even people that have been stitching for a while. And we're going to go over that. I'm going to, and then I will post it on the Facebook group I have. It's Stitch of the Month Facebook group. I will also post a link to that. You can request to join. There's just a couple of questions. And then this file will be available for you to download. It'll usually be a one-page sheet with the stitch and instructions on how to use it. And then I'm also going to talk about all of my antique needlework tools and accessories I have. I really didn't realize how many of them I had until we moved. And I have this huge cabinet. It's about 8 feet wide, literally 8 feet wide. And it's full of glass or full of shelves, and it has glass doors. And I have all sorts of pincushions and different types of scissors and books and all different types of needlework accessories and things to teach you about needlework and to use for your needlework. And so every video, I'm going to pull a few of those out and talk about them and discuss what they were used for. So, and then also, I have, like I said, I have a huge collection of antique samplers. So I'm going to discuss a different sampler every month. Now, it could be a new sampler. It could be one of my designs. It could be a reproduction I'm doing. It could be just some of the antique samplers I have. And I'll discuss a different one every month just to go over it. And if I have any history on it, a few of them I do have a history on them. So it's that's what I love about the samplers is the history. So I want to share that with you. So my first life update is I had a wonderful Christmas with my family. I'm hoping you had a wonderful Christmas also. We got to go to, I live in St. Petersburg, and my sister has a timeshare in Orlando. So her and her husband came down from Michigan to stay in their timeshare. And Jeffrey and I went over to stay with them. And my sister from Texas and my mother, my 90-year-old mother, soon to be 91-year-old mother, is staying with her for the winter because it's cold up in Michigan. And they came over and we spent a few days together. It was really nice just to relax and talk. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything. We just kind of stayed in the house, ate a fabulous Christmas dinner, ate a lot of leftovers, and just had a really nice, nice visit. It's good to see everybody. So, but on Christmas Day, I of course exchanged gifts with Jeffrey, and I had sent him a list of a lot of items I wanted for Christmas and links. A lot of them are on Etsy and Amazon. And he actually bought me everything on my list, which I was shocked. I did not expect that. I said, a few of these that, whatever you want to get. And he bought everything. So that was a wonderful surprise. So I'm going to go over the gifts he gave me because except for one, they were all Stitch related. And the other one is the latest Outlander novel, which I'm really excited about. Go Tell It to the Bees, I believe it's called. I haven't started it yet, but it's about this thick and I'm very excited I think it's the 9th book in the series. So I'm very excited to start reading that. But I want to go over the gifts he gave me because I'm so excited, and I'm sure you will be too, because you're all Stitchers. So I'm sure you're going to want these gifts. I'm posting links, or I will give you links to all of these in the comments section or description of this video. So if you want them, you can order them also. But the first thing I got after being at a retreat a few weeks ago and helping other people and myself pick up and find lost needles that fell on the floor in the carpet, I asked him for a telescopic magnet. Woo, 3D, woohoo. So it's a little magnet on the end so you can run it around on the floor and find your lost needles or other metallic objects. Now this was a set. This one was in there, this little small one, but this one is the best of all. Ta-da! It's a great big telescoping one. And the best thing is, do this, it has a light. So if you drop something on the floor, a needle, you can search on the floor and find it and pick it up. And the light will reflect off the needle, making it easier to find. So wonderful gift. It's a 2-piece set. Amazon.com. They come in a nice little box. So I highly recommend those. Then I sent him a link to the Etsy page for, I'm not sure how to say her name. It's Rovaris. I'm not sure how to say her name, but it's Rovaris. And again, there will be a link to this. This is from her Etsy shop. This is, she calls it a frogger or a seam ripper is what we used to call them. But this is made with Murano glass. I'm trying to get, there you go, where you can see the reflection. It's actually made in Murano, Italy. She is in Italy, so they will be sent from Italy. Shipping's not bad, very quick shipping. But she has a lot of different colors. This one is usually sold out. I was so pleased that he actually could get me this color because it's my favorite. And every time I checked, they were sold out of this. So I gave him a list of all the ones I wanted, but this is the one I really wanted. So I got this wonderful little seam ripper, and this is also fabulous. It is I don't know if you can see the, it's a needle threader, but it's also Murano glass. And she orders these from the Murano glass company. And then when she gets them, she puts all these on and puts them all together. She also has like a laying tool and other items. Like I said, a lot of different colors. This is fabulous. I was thrilled when he got me these. And the next is also, I just loved everything, but this one is so cute. This is a little scissor case, and it was a kit. This one's from StitchHappyArt on Etsy. She's in Seattle. And unfortunately, I just checked and it was out of stock, but hopefully they'll be getting more. And it's, I don't know if you can see, it's got little holes. And then you get this pattern, and I love it because it's got 5 cats on it, and we have 5 cats. But it was very easy to cross stitch. It comes with the everything to make this. It comes with the thread, the floss, and then it's like a pearl cotton to stitch it all together. So it was just this sheet of, I think it's imitation leather with all the holes punched in it. So you cross stitch that, and then you take these other pieces of leather and this piece of plywood, which has this beautiful design on it, and you just stitch it all together to make this scissor case. So it was just kind of a, you do it as a running stitch where you go over and under and over and under. And so it's the same on the front and the back. And then you do every other stitch and then go back and do every other stitch. Very easy to put together. And it actually, I was kind of worried when I saw it that it was going to be flat, but they actually give you enough to where it gives you room to put a pair of scissors in here. And it'll keep your scissors safe. It's very stiff. And then it has a little metal thing there and a hole, and you just pop it through there. Isn't that beautiful? I'm telling you, it was so much fun. I stitched it up in an afternoon and got it all put together the same day. It was so much fun because you get it done right away. The other gift he got me, the other gifts, I have 2 more, is this scissor case. This is by Art Inspirit. They're actually in the Ukraine. This is laser cut wood. And they have all different designs. This one's kind of a witchy cat one. They have boxes. They have, if you wind your floss on bobbins, they have beautiful wooden bobbins and a box that they all fit in. Fabulous. And it opens up like this. You can see my scissors are in there. It has little magnets that hold it together, so your scissors will not fall. It actually will hold one in a case, but if you have it in here, it will not fall out. It really protects your scissors. It has 2 little flaps here, and you just kind of pull it apart and open it up. Again, the link for this is at the end. And then this is also from Art Inspirit. It's again a cat. It's a matching design. I love the cats, obviously, because we have 5 of them. But This one, again, pops open, and it's a needle case. And you can see the magnets that hold it together. You don't have to worry about getting poked by needles or losing your needles. It just snaps together, and it will not open in your bag or wherever you're carrying it. So those were my wonderful Christmas gifts I got. It was a really good Christmas. And again, I'm not affiliated with any of these products. I'm not getting compensation for them. I don't. I just like them, and I want to share and see if you're interested. The links will all be at the end. You can go purchase them. So the next thing on my list of things to talk about today, I'm going to go over the stitch of the month. And this month I wanted to start with just basic stitching instructions. Now this includes waist knots, cross stitching over 2 threads on linen or even weave, and stitching over 1 thread on linen. So these are the instructions. They're all written out. There's diagrams. So I'm going to go over each of these instructions. And again, this is on the Facebook group, Stitch of the Month. And if you ask to join, I will approve your joining, and you'll be able to get these instructions, and there'll be different stitches posted each month. So I'm going to demonstrate the stitches. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. I actually have a camera here, and I'm going to demonstrate some stitches for you. So we'll go over that. So what we're going to go over is basic stitching instructions, hints for stitching on linen or other even weaves. So most important, this, especially if you're a beginner, you should note the difference between threads, floss, and stitches. If the directions call for moving a certain number of threads, count the actual fabric threads shown in the diagram. Floss is the fiber being used to stitch the piece, or silk or pearl cotton or whatever you're using to stitch with. And stitches are the actual stitch you're creating, whether it's a cross stitch or a specialty stitch or black work, whatever type of stitch you're doing. And they can cover a varying number of threads. So count carefully. Usually each square on a chart is an area equals 2 fabric threads high and 2 fabric threads wide. Now, if you're stitching on Aida or other single count fabrics, each square on the chart equals 1 square of fabric. So when we start the stitching, I like to use a waist knot or an away waist knot. So here, this diagram here shows a waist knot. This is on the front side, and this is what your back side looks like. If you do your half stitches and then go back, that's what it'll look like. Now this is an away waist knot, and what you'll do is you'll make a knot, go down into your fabric at least 3 inches from where you're stitching, and then come up and do all your stitches. And then when you're done with that thread, you would cut the that strand of floss, you would cut the knot off, rethread your needle, and weave it underneath. This is used more for stitches that are not in a row, not in a straight row like the waist knot. So now I'm going to show you how to do a waist knot. This is the camera I use, and I'm going to show you how to start your waist knot. So I've got this fabric or thread here, this floss. I've put a big knot in the front of it or on the end of it, and I'm going to start stitching. So I'm going to go down here on the front, pull this down, oops, pull it there so we can see it a little bit. So I'm going to go down, and there's your knot on the front. Now I'm going to be stitching across here. So I'm going to come up down here, straight down from that stitch, and I'm going to be stitching. This is like a 20 count linen I have in a frame here. It's a little loose. So I'm going to start stitching. I'm going to do my half crosses down, and as I go, you can see where this thread runs underneath there, and I'm just catching the thread on the back, and that saves you from having to like flip your fabric over or try and hold it with your finger to catch it. So I'm just going to do halfway across and continue across. The row. Now what you can do is, I'm just going to keep going here. And when I get up to the knot, I'm going to cut it off. And then you can just keep stitching across your row or go back. Just, you want to make sure you catch that thread on the back. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut this knot off from the front. And that, like I said, that saves you from having to flip your needlework over, especially if it's in a frame or something. Then I'm just going to go back and it's been caught on the back. Now, another thing I do when I'm stitching, say I want to continue across this row. If you're almost out of thread and you want to end your thread, you can also do the same thing. Pull it up through and cut it off here. Cut it off. Leave that little tail there. And then when you start your next stitch, I'm just tying a, it doesn't have to be a pretty knot, just a large knot in that. I actually usually go down into the same hole here and start stitching. And as you stitch, it will catch both threads on the back. So you don't have to flip it over to end your thread either. So that's what a waist knot is. And then when you get, like I said, when you get down to the end here, you'll just cut those ends off. So now we're going to talk about away waist knots. So again, I've got a knot in the end and say I'm going to be stitching over in this area. I'm going to go down, get in the view here. You want to be at least 3 inches away from where you're going to be stitching, so you have enough thread to rethread your needle. So then I'm going to come up over here and do my stitching. So this would be for stitches maybe that aren't in a row or there's nothing to catch. Say it's just back stitching and you have nothing to catch your thread in when you to start. So I'm going to do a few back stitches and then maybe a couple of cross stitches. And then once you're done, when you get your area stitched or you run out of thread, you just do one more stitch. You just cut this knot off. You'll have to turn it over, rethread your needle with the thread that's underneath, and run it under these stitches to end your thread. That's so this is a waist knot. And this is an away waist knot. Again, you can see why it's called that, because you're starting away from your stitches. And the directions for that are in the handout that's in the, that will be available on the Floss or on the group. So again, that will be on the handout. They'll be available in the Stitch of the Month Facebook group. So the next thing I want to talk about is cross stitching over 2 linen threads. Either it can be linen, even weave, whatever type of fabric you're using. And this is how I do it. My preference is to start next to a vertical linen thread, and I will explain that. So if you see your fabric is all woven over and under. So here's a horizontal thread. You see my arrow here, and then this is a vertical thread. You can see I've got a little diagram here with a line showing the vertical thread. Now, when I start my cross stitching, I prefer to come up next to a vertical thread. Some people say it will make your stitching smoother and easier. It won't pull as much. I don't know. I prefer it. I always do it that way because when I'm stitching here, and then I come stitch over here and I look at my work and I'm stitching over a horizontal thread. I'm coming up next to a horizontal thread. I know I'm off somewhere. So I always start next to a vertical thread. It's just a habit. I like it. This is the way I teach it. Again, it's up to you. No stitch police here. So you're just going to come up next to a vertical thread. You're going to count over 2 threads, 2 fabric threads, up 2 fabric threads, and go down at 2. And there's your first stitch, or your first half of your stitch. So 1, 2, and then whether you do them one at a time individually with the over dyed threads, you may want to do each stitch separate, or you go across 1, 2, and then do all your left to right threads, and then come back and do the top half. It's up to you. But this is how you go over 2 threads. And after a while, I know it can be intimidating at first, but after a while, it will just become habit. I don't even have to think about it anymore. You just come up over 2, up 2, and down. And then you can come down 3, 4, and then come back up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and continue across the row. So, and now I'm going to demonstrate how to stitch on linen. Okay, and here we have, this is again a close-up of this linen. It's a little hard to see. Let me try and zoom in some more so you can actually see the threads. So I'm going to come up here. It's hard to see. This is a vertical thread. I'm coming up next to a vertical thread. Now I'm going to count over 2 fabric threads and up 2 fabric threads and go down. That's the 1, 2 step. Then you're just going to come up 2 threads below. Now, if you want to continue across the row doing half crosses, you would just come up or go down here. You could count over 2 threads from the previous stitch. And there's another half stitch. Again, make sure you're next to a vertical thread and go down. And then go back across the row. Or you can just do each stitch individually. You come down and do the bottom row. So you do the next row below it, count down 2 threads, and then this will share holes if your pattern calls for it, of course. If you have like 2 rows of cross stitch, and it will share holes with the row above it. And you, on this one, you can do each stitch individually. Again, that's your choice. Some people, it saves a little bit of thread if you do the half and go back across, but if you're using over dyed thread, you're going to want to do them each individually, or you kind of lose the, it gets mottled. It doesn't, unless you're looking for that kind of a tweedy look, it can get mottled and you won't be able to see the beautiful color changes. So that is how to cross stitch on linen. So the next thing we're going to talk about is cross stitching over 1 thread. So when you come up, this is the same linen. You can see here's your horizontal thread, your vertical threads, horizontal thread. You're going to come up at 1 in one of the holes, count over 1 thread, up 1 thread, go down at 2. And because we're working over a vertical thread, you're going to come up down here at 3. Your stitch on the back is going to match the direction of the stitch you're going over. So 1, 2, go down, matching your vertical thread on the top, come up at 3, go down at 4. And then, so the next one you're going to go over will be a horizontal thread. So you're going to come up at 1, go down at 2, go horizontally across the back and go down at 4. So when you do this, when you match your thread on the back to the direction of the linen thread you're stitching over, it prevents the thread from slipping under and losing the stitch. That can be very frustrating when you're trying to stitch over one. So this is what I found. I learned this, I don't even remember from who, but many, many years ago, how to stitch and prevent your threads from slipping under. Now you'll notice when you stitch here, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, you're not going to be able to come up in this hole here for 1 because you already have a thread going down in that hole. So you can actually just come up over here and go down here. So it would be 1, 2, and then because you're going over a vertical thread, it'd be 1, 2, up here for 3, 4. And I'm going to demonstrate this again with live stitching. So here we are again with the linen here. So I'm going to come up, and I am coming up next to a vertical thread. Let me move this over a little bit. Okay, here. I'm coming up next to a vertical thread. So what I'm going to do, count over 1 thread, up 1 thread. And then because this is a vertical thread, I'm going to come down so my thread on the back is vertical. Then my next step, my next stitch is over a horizontal thread. So I'm going to come up in this same hole, 1 over, 1 up. Notice I'm going over a horizontal thread. So I'm going to go horizontally across the back. And then, like I said in the, when I was showing the diagram, this next one, I can't come back up in this same hole to do my next stitch. So I'm actually going to come up over here. So all you want to make sure all your top threads are going the same direction. So you'll always do your bottom thread, whichever way you do it. You can do your bottom threads angled this way, or you can do them angled this way. I learned doing them bottom left to top right. So that's the way I do them. So there. So I've done a stitch, and because I'm going over a vertical thread, I'm going to make sure my thread on the back is vertical. And you just continue across the row. And again, at that point, you'll probably be doing all your stitches the same way. And there. Now that was a horizontal, so I went horizontally across the back, and it just prevents your, like I said, your stitches from slipping under while you're working on them. So I hope that helped. I hope you learned a few tips, techniques. I like to teach, obviously, and I'm hoping this this helped you. And if you have any hints or comments, suggestions, anything, please leave a comment below. And I would love to hear from you. I hope this helped again. And be sure to subscribe if you like learning this, because I'll be doing a new stitch each month. So next, I want to talk about my antique tools I have. I've been collecting for forever, for so many years. And also, again, I want to promote somebody. If you're interested in antique needlework tools or collections, I highly recommend this book called Antique American Needlework Tools. It's by Dawn Cook Roningen. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I apologize, Dawn. But it's a fabulous book. It has hundreds of items in her collection that you can see different pictures. She tells a little bit about them. I have a link to this at the end, also in the comments for this video, so you can order it from Amazon. It's just a wonderful book. And I was also thrilled when I started looking through it and saw how many items I have that are similar or the same to what she has in this book. So I'm going to be using this a lot to look up things information about the items I have besides my Google research. So the item I want to talk about today is a little bit different. It's kind of a fun little item, handmade item that I have a couple of that I'm going to show you. This is Pincushions, and they're made from greeting cards. Isn't this great? So they're cut out from greeting cards. And then the edges are, these are triple blanket stitch. If you can see, yeah, up at the top there, you can see the blanket stitching around the edge. They took the greeting cards and punched all these holes in them and made these cute little shoes out of them that have pin cushions in them. So this one actually, these shoes were made from fairly plain cardstock. And this flower on the front was cut out of another greeting card and put on the front. And then it's actually covered with a sheet of acetate, thin acetate to hold it in place. So, and the pin cushions come out of the shoe. Isn't this great? And in this book by Dawn here, I found some very similar shoes on page 77 of her book. She talks about, you can see them here, talks about them a little bit. So that's kind of fun. So anyway, these shoes, I was looking at this one closely. I don't know if you can see it. There's little tiny print there. And I figured out it actually says the Drawing Board, which is a company in Dallas, Texas. It was founded in July 31st, 1956. So that dates these to after 1956. And it was founded by Selwyn Belofsky, also called Selly, and Alan H. Husley, who was known as Bud, in Dallas, Texas. And it was called the Drawing Board. It's now headquartered in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. And so it's still in business. They originally began with a line of mail order specialty cards designed to target the dental profession. And then they began marketing cards for other professions, including doctors, lawyers, accountants. And then they began to branch out into other products and markets and came up with the trademark forms, which can obviously date themselves. They're called the note-o-gram and the phone-o-gram and the mem-o-gram. So those were little items they also sold. They sold receipt books, labels, voucher books, envelopes. They're still selling those today. And it was so much fun to find all that. I love researching all the information on these items you can find. It's amazing. Google's like wonderful. And this is also, if you can see, it has some embroidery across the top. Try and get it where you can see it. And it has cross stitch on the bottom of these wonderful little embroidered flowers and cross stitch. And it just fits inside the shoe. And the shoes, you can see, have this beautiful pinkish red metallic bottom in them. But these are just little wonderful shoes. And these are pretty common. I've seen them around. I'm going to try and pick up a few more we go to a lot of antique shows and flea markets and things, and you can pick them up there. You can also find them online. I looked up vintage boxes made from cards. I just put that in my Google search, and examples came up for sale. There was even a video on how to make these. It was wonderful. They didn't use the fancy edging, just a blanket stitch edge, but it was a lot of fun to watch, and I may actually try and make one. I'll show you. I also have this beautiful card or box made out of cards, all different greeting cards. You can see it's got a Christmas one on the bottom. This is also covered in acetate. And it has different cards. I would say this one is probably for some kind of a shower, maybe a baby shower. This, you can see this actually has a quadruple blanket stitch. Try and get that in focus. A quadruple blanket stitch, and then the edges are crocheted together. Isn't that fabulous? So it has a This card is to cheer you. So it must have been like a get well card. This one is another get well card. There's, this is a birthday card, and it actually says on here, it's supposed to have a genuine 4-leaf clover in it. Obviously they lost a 4-leaf clover, but, and then inside has different cards. Beautiful scene here. The little girl dusting, and it says dusting. I think it's a birthday greeting, but that's real cute. And then the other cards on the inside are Christmas. You can see the candles are Christmas cards in the bottom. So I want to try and make one of these because these are so wonderful. So that's my little some of the things from my collection. Again, next month or next time in the 15th, I'm going to be talking about other items in my collection. If there's something you would like to see, let me know, and I will see if I have one and pull it out and do some research, and we can talk about it. So the next thing I want to talk about is my latest design I've published. I have, like I said, a lot of antique samplers, and I love this sampler. It's done by Mary Ann Stanton. She was age 10 in 1816. Try and get it without a reflection here. It's almost monochromatic. There's 2 different shades of green. The alphabet in these bands are done in eyelet stitch. And I really don't have any other information about Mary. I tried to do some research, but without more information, where she lived, her parents' names, initials, nothing. I have no way to find out any more about her. I always keep looking, but at this time I can't find anything else about Mary. And this is, again, it was done in 2 shades of green silk. It looks monochromatic, but one's a little bit more of a bluish green and one's like a dark avocado peel green. This is an uneven weave off-white linen. It's uneven weave. The vertical threads are 48 threads to the inch, and the horizontal threads are 52 threads to the inch, which isn't that far off. Some samplers are much more, the number of threads is much more uneven. The design area is 221 by 294 stitches high, and this original sampler is about 9 inches wide and 11.5 inches. That's inside the frame. That's the actual size of the stitched area. And the verses used on this sampler are really unusual. Now, the first verse up here I found in the book called On the Duties of the Young by Dr. Hugh Blair, and it was dated 1794. So that pretty much fits in with this time frame. And the verse, which is hard to read, I will read it to you. It reads, by forming themselves on fantastic models and vying with one another in the reigning follies, the young begin with being ridiculous and end in being vicious and immoral. That sounds bad. I could only find the second verse in a book titled The English Spelling Book, accompanied by a series of easy and familiar lessons as intended for an introduction as to a correct knowledge of the English language. That's quite a title. That was done by William Maver, LLD, and dated 1809. And it's actually the 86th edition of this book. I found that on Google. Both of these books are on Google. They're a free book if you just do a search. I just did a search for a line in the verse. That's how I find out where a lot of the verses came from, whether they're hymns or verses. And you can usually find them in a book or some other. The bottom verse was in a part of a section titled Moral and Practical Observations, which ought to be committed to memory at an early age. Now, I don't know if Mary had to memorize this, but this verse is a little more typical to what's on samplers. It's industry is the parent of every excellence. The finest talents would be lost in obscurity if they were not called forth by study and cultivation. So in other words, work hard and you will become excellent. And note that, I don't know if you can see it, but many of the words in the verses themselves here, you can see this has this, it looks like a small F instead of an S. There's a couple others in here. That's called a medial S, or it's also known as the long S. And it was a second form of the lowercase letter S. And you'll see it in a lot of documents and other samplers. It was used in the Constitution, if you can see. And so anytime you see that, what looks like an F, it's actually an S. And its use in printing actually started to go out of style in the 1800s because the printers, it was one less letter they had to mess with. So they just started using our regular S that we use today in their printing. So I have this, like I said, this is my latest sampler. This is what it looks like. This pattern, I've also included a photograph of the original sampler, and I've included all the information I gave you on the verse, where the verse came from. There's a photo of the sampler, the original sampler. It has eyelet stitches. I have instructions for how to do the eyelet stitches. Here's the chart. I made it, it's over 8 pages. I made it really big to make it easy to read. And then again, here's the information on the back of the sampler with the different counts of thread, the sizes it will come out to. It's in 2 shades of DMC green is what I use to chart it with. If you want to take those 2 shades of green and match them to a color of silk, that would be wonderful. You could also do the entire sampler in one color, green or red or blue would be beautiful. I've given you all the information about, like, I found out about the books, that I found the verses in, so you can look them up if you want to look at. There's a lot of fun information in these books to look at, and all the things that kids had to learn in those days. I can't imagine having to read all that. But anyway, that is my latest sampler. So I'm excited. It's posted in my Etsy shop. It's available today. Again, I'll provide a link to my Etsy shop at the end and all the other things I talked about today. And I hope you enjoyed my first floss tube video. My next video is going to be posted on January 15th. So be sure to subscribe so you can be notified when the next video is posted. And I'd love to hear from you. So please comment below with suggestions, ideas, constructive criticism. And I just say thank you for watching. And I hope to see you again. Thanks.